explain how the game works. This diagram explains anything. Yeah, so I just want to sort of start the conversation by talking about two of my really intense memories of associated with Street Fighter. So the first one is from Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo, and this was my first exposure to the game. I think it was Super Championship. It was one of the later versions. And I mostly did this. This is almost all I did, just throw fireballs. Constantly throw fireballs. Because it was really amazing. Like, I understood that it was a sort of competitive game, but I was really wrapped up in the characters were so colorful and interesting, and you know, it was an interesting experience to have these special moves and stuff. And I was just sort of wrapped up in that. And that was my introduction to Street Fighter, and I still remember it, right? And I still sort of weirdly, Street Fighter of all video games is still like my favorite lore of all video games is the Street Fighter lore. Going on. My second really intense memory is very recent, which is from our Spring Fighter tournament. So every spring we do a Street Fighter tournament. This last spring we did it, and you know we've done a few tournaments. We're getting better at it. But Seth was in town for that, and Seth Killian, who's in the middle. And he came by and he was giving a talk. We were showing the movie documentary called Next Up. I got next. Sorry. There's another one that's like level. Anyway, and just the whole community came out, and it was really amazing. They all came to the tournament, and they really just sort of picked up and helped us run it. And it was incredibly generous. And they didn't ask for anything. They were just happy to be there. They were happy to have this place and share this game with us. And so, as sort of a beginning to this conversation, I just want to. And the other thing, right, is that Chinatown Fair had just closed, right? This was right after. Does everyone know Chinatown Fair? Right, this is a very famous arcade in New York. Recently closed down. Chinatown Fair closed down, and Next Level. That's why I'm confused. Next Level opened up. It's opened up in Brooklyn, which is sort of like the people left who were so attached to this place that they just couldn't let the community die, and they've set their own space up, and it's doing really well, and it's really amazing. It's kind of a wonderful games in New York story. So it was just this really touching thing that this community came out and was so generous with their time and their spirit, and was really excited that we were excited, right? It was just a really great experience. So I want to sort of open the conversation because this is a conference a lot about game design, and you know, a lot of us are game designers. Just open the conversation to remember that, like, we can talk about Street Fighter and a lot of these games as code, right, as software and as rules and the stuff we're working on and, you know, the levers we're pulling to try to create certain things. We can also talk about Street Fighter as a community, right? Like that the game is not just this set of moves, right, this palette of characters. It's also all of the people who are helping it grow. It's all the people who are investigating it. That is really to appreciate, to understand the game of Street Fighter, and to, you know, we have game designers here that have worked on Street Fighter titles, right? To make the game of Street Fighter, you have to understand it as also this sort of social institution. So I just wanted to open with that comment, and then we're going to have our three speakers introduce themselves. So first we have David Sirlin.
David Sirlin, and I've worked on the design and balance of several asymmetric competitive games, so Street Fighter HD Remix, Puzzle Fighter HD Remix. Kongai is a turn-based strategy game. Yomi is a card game, and several other card games. You get the idea. I want to talk a little about balance, and I kind of come from, I guess, a different worldview or something than Scott was telling us about earlier. So in my world, what's really interesting is a game that can stand up to 10+ years of intense tournament play and not fall apart. That's what's interesting to me, and that's actually the only type of game I am working on now or have worked on in the last several years. So you don't get the cheat by having like new stuff come out, and so it didn't really have to be balanced. It's like, no, it really has to be balanced. I mean, that's what versions of Street Fighter have done, and also what I'm trying to do in my own projects as well. Also, I wanted to say kind of a grumpy thing, and then and then happier times things after that. So the grumpy thing is part of my interest in competitive games. It means that I need to have equal access to whatever the real game is, as my competitors. So if you out there are designing something that is a competitive game and you have like a barrier between the player and the game in the form of collectability or a forced grind, like it takes time, then I'm personally disgusted and insulted by that. And I am, and I think you're making the world worse by hurting the world of competitive games by doing that. So you have my contempt. About upbeat, exciting things. So I hope we're all awake after this coffee break. I'm going to give my super fast 5-minute blast mini lecture about game balance. And I want to talk to you first, what do we even mean when we say game balance? Second, why is it the most important thing in competitive games? Third, why is it totally not the most important thing in competitive games? After that, there is what are you not allowed to do as a game balancer? What moves are you just not allowed to make? And then finally, there won't be time at all. I'll just skip really quickly through. When you're designing a competitive game in general, what are you not allowed to do? There's kind of some mirror between that and the previous question. So what do we mean when we say game balance? I think that's an overloaded term, and I think people usually mean kind of two different things at once. And on the one hand, they mean the fairness of starting options, and on the other hand, they mean viable options during gameplay. So what do I mean by that? Fairness of starting options means that at the beginning of the game, Seth picks Zangief and I pick Chun-Li, so we have different starting options, and we have some kind of expectation that those are going to be fair against each other. If the game is like already decided because Chun-Li can't beat Zangief, it's just stupid. That's what fairness of starting options means. It's not just fighting games though, like in a real-time strategy game, you pick Protoss, I pick Zerg, or in a card game, you have one deck and I have another, and in all these cases, we expect it to be reasonably fair. But that's not the only thing people mean. So let's say we had a game where we did a great job on that part, or a game where we didn't have to do a great job because it's a symmetric game, and everyone starts with the same stuff. Which, by the way, illustrates why symmetric games are easier to make than asymmetric, because there's a whole other layer of crap you've got to worry about when you make an asymmetric game. But anyway, let's say we made it past this first barrier. How about we play StarCraft? So I pick Zerg, and you pick Protoss, and it's fair. Like, we know after all these tournaments that that's a 50-50 match. We know there's a 50-50 match against Terran. So, are we all done with balance? Is it great? No, because we don't know anything about what the game plays like, if that's all I told you. It's entirely possible that it's 50-50, but I can't do anything but build Zerglings. And if that's the case, people are going to say it's imbalanced. They have an expectation that when they pick the Zerg race, there's this huge set of possible options to them. There's all these units, there's infestors, and there's roaches, but if you build any of those, you just lose. So that's stupid and that's imbalanced because the set of viable options has been just reduced to one. So it's a different kind of imbalance, and we have to care about both of them when we're making any kind of asymmetric competitive game. So why is balance the most important thing? Well, I told you at the beginning that I care about these games that have to remain balanced for 10 years of high-level tournament play. If there's any problem with them, they'll be found out immediately. So just based on that, you can see why I would say that. But I want to put it in perspective that if you're making a single-player game like the next Mario or something, and there was some bug, let's say it was an obscure bug, maybe people won't find it, it's really difficult to do anyway, it lets you jump a little higher, or maybe sequence break, as was talked about in the previous lecture. So what effect is this going to have on your player base? Well, 99% of the players are not even going to know or care about this, and the 1% that do use this, maybe they'll even be happier that they got to discover this trick. But in the world of competitive games, that kind of thing can completely ruin the game and completely dominate the game. If it's obscure, it doesn't matter, it will be found. If it's difficult to do, it doesn't matter, it will be mastered by masses of players, and your tournaments could very well be dominated and defined by that bug. The experience of playing the game or that imbalance, it could be defined by that imbalance. So the one little mistake in balance or a software bug, either way, it can be a nuclear thing that just blows up the whole scene. So that is why it is so damn important. But I want to give the flip side about why it's not really important. Or, I mean, that's a little deceptive to say it that way, but you'll see what I mean, I think. in the games I'm working on now, these card games, which simulate fighting games usually, I use the same characters in all of them. One character is named Garrus Rook, and Rook is a stone golem. He's a big, tough guy made of rock, okay? And it's kind of like Zangief or Potemkin, if you know those fighting game examples. And in the development of more than one of these games, but we'll say Yomi, at some point Rook was too good. And so some tester comes along and says, we could improve the balance of the game by reducing Rook's hit points from 100 to 70, and then it would be fair. And the thing is, it's very possible he was right. I think if we made that change at that time in development, Rook would have been a fair character. But we can't make that move. We're not allowed to make that move in balancing the game because it doesn't express what Rook is about. There's a concept of flavor, which I deal with like all day, every day. The flavor of something or the aesthetic of it is very important. And the aesthetic of Rook is that he's big and tough and powerful, and you totally ruin that by giving him the same number of hit points as like a little girl who's in the game who's not made of rock even. So you're just not allowed to do that. Okay, let me give you a second example. Let's say that Rook sucked and we need to make him better. And someone said, okay, let's speed him up. Let's make him like super fast. If you had walking speed in a fighting game, like we can walk 3 times as fast or something. So we need to reject that too. And you're thinking, oh, we need to reject that for the same reason because it violates the flavor. That's true, but we need to reject it for even more reasons beyond that. One thing that does is it steps on the toes of another gameplay archetype because there's someone else in the game that their purpose of being there is to express the idea of being a fast character, of being able to do a whole bunch of moves, like a flurry of things, and maybe individually they don't do much damage, but together, they add to a lot. And that's a dynamic that we're trying to create. That it's supposed to match a personality type of some players and what they're looking for. If you speed Rook up too much, it steps on the toes of that. It's too much homogeneity, like too much the same. And also it leaves a vacuum where Rook was, because he's supposed to be the slow, powerful guy. And that is an equally valid archetype and dynamic that we're looking for. So those are just examples of things you're not allowed to do in balancing. You can't mess up the dynamics and play styles that you want the game to have, and you can't mess up the flavor. So you're really balancing with like one hand behind your back. But you just have to do that, or your game is going to just feel stupid and wrong otherwise. And if you do work within those restrictions, I think you can still do a good job. It's just hard work. Finally, I wanted to just say a few words about designing a competitive game in general. There's things that you can't do. Something I have to fight against a lot is making sure that a game isn't solvable. Like, if you have no hidden information and no randomness and it's turn-based or something, it just so lends itself to being solved, and there's no way that's going to last 10 years. If you're lucky if that lasts like a month or something. So it's a constant thing to fight against, is players solving your game. Being degenerate is similar but not exactly the same, but that Zergling example I gave where maybe there's a bunch of different ways to win with Zerglings, but it's degenerate either way, if that's all you can really build. Another thing you have to keep in mind is testing of skills. The competitive game needs to be skill testing in some way. But you as the designer have to decide what skills are important to test and what do you want to test. Make sure you exclude skills that you don't want to test and include skills you do. In certain types of games, you have to minimize something called kingmaker, which is a buzzword we could talk about later if it comes up again. You have to also minimize pre-game alliances. Like if we played a game where Steph and I decide before the game starts we're going to team up and just knock out the other guy, that's just automatically not going to be a competitive game because that's stupid and easily defeated. You have to really care about slippery slope and snowball effects, where things can kind of get out of control and get more and more powerful. It's a similar concept to the lame duck effect, meaning like the game is not over yet, but we're still stuck playing it for some reason. Maybe I'm so far behind, there's just no possible way I can win, but technically the game isn't over. That makes for a poor competitive game. And finally, you have to care about how the game is going to play on the absolute highest level of skill, which you can't possibly know what it is, because your game isn't solvable, remember? If it was solvable, then it's like dead and no one cares about it. So you have this unsolvable, like impossible to know what the best gameplay is, and yet as the player base gets closer and closer to whatever that is, it has to remain a good game. So there's just this enormous number of challenges. It's like a tiny bullseye that you have to hit if you're trying to make a competitive game. So I will turn it over to my lovely associate, Killian, on Capcom.
Thank you, David. Frank as well for putting this together. I mean, when I first heard about this idea from you and Dylan and some of the guys, it sounded incredible, and then the fact that you pulled this off is really impressive to me. So really looking forward to meeting some of my heroes and people that I really admire in this room later today. My name's Killian. I work at Capcom. I won't give you the bizarre story of how I got to Capcom. I used to teach philosophy at the University of Illinois. So if you're already going to sleep, I apologize. That's my sonorous, boring lecture voice. At Capcom, I have a weird sort of role where I work part of the time building the community that Charles was talking about. Guys like Arturo I've known for well over 10 years. A lot of the guys in the scene, David as well. Bringing those people together is the thing that sort of draws me back to the game. But I also work on the design side on all of our fighting titles as sort of a floating consultant on all the fighting titles. So I worked a little bit with David on HD Remix, but that was sort of before the role was formalized. So most of my work was on Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition 2012, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, and Ultimate Marvel. So basically, fighting games are my thing. I love them a lot. And it's interesting to me, of the people up here with me, we all sort of began in the same place as sort of, national level and then sort of even international level competitors, but have gone in sort of a different direction. David's now working on card games, which I like because they sort of crystallized a lot of the design problems very neatly. Arturo is still playing at a world-class level, and I found my way into Capcom, where I do my weird job there. But I began sort of, I think, in a similar place to David, where in a very sort of a theoretical kind of ground. But what I found interesting is that now that I'm actually working more on the games and on multiple projects, because I'm not stuck working on one project, I can sort of drop in, complain about this, that, and the other thing, and then whisk off to another more exciting project that's not mired in some sort of problem, which I love, is that I've moved from sort of a very analytical kind of approach, which is sort of my natural inclination and the way I still think about a lot of things, to sort of a more metaphorical approach to things like game balance and game design, with the players very much in my mind as I go forward. So even though it's sort of a more metaphorical approach that I take into the design process, it still makes very concrete, sort of specific examples that I'll try and illustrate at least one of them quickly here today, because I hope we actually get to talk. Because when we said discussion, that's what I was that's what I was hoping for. So I hope we get to it. But it was funny for me to hear David talking about flavor, because the thing I think about is, I call it the juice of every character. So what defines a character, again, I do think a lot about balance, but balance to me is almost a secondary concern. What you want first and foremost is a fun experience of that character. And those characters need to be defined. And they're not just defined in themselves, they're defined against each other. So I think of it almost as sort of like an ensemble cast in like a play, or like an episodic TV show or something like that. And where we're the writers of that show, and we have to write dialogue almost for the characters, like the moves are almost like a dialogue. There's a million ways to punch holes in this analogy, so don't lean on it too much, but I have to admit, this is sort of what's happening in the back of my mind. And even when you see a great player like Arturo play a character, there's the word play there, but you almost call it, that was an incredible performance. So in the same way that a different actor can sort of inhabit a role, you're sort of sliding players into the role of these characters, and a great player of that character sort of understands what this character is all about at a deep way, maybe can innovate on that experience, create something new. But I think very much in terms of sort of this ensemble cast and the dialogue almost that they speak. You can tell, like, when a character on a favorite show of yours or something, you're watching them and you're like, that's not what that character would say. Who wrote that? Like, that's totally wrong. Like, it's got this wrong sound to it. And similarly, there are certain design options that you can choose that, as David was talking about, this will slot exactly into what I was speaking about, just are wrong. So I'll talk about one of the changes we made recently, going from Super Street Fighter 4 to Arcade Edition, and try and get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts. and again, talking about an easy-to-understand archetype, and thankfully, most of you have experience with Street Fighter, but I'm going to talk about Zangief very briefly. And Zangief is a very easy character to understand, both from the look of him, which is just, a big 7-foot Russian guy covered with scars, and he's a wrestler, and what Zangief is all about is closing the distance between you and the opponent, and then grabbing you with this sort of epic throw. And this epic throw is sort of theoretically the way Zangief does his damage. So to do that, there's many characters who can hassle you from across the screen. So there's a huge number of situations where Zangief is actively disadvantaged up until he gets right into your face, and that's where he wants to be. But his tools to sort of advance are rather weak. So if people are throwing stuff at you, what can you do? You can jump. You can jump over it, but Zangief's jump is really bad. He's got this slow, sort of lethargic jump. He's got a huge hitbox in the air. It's easy to react to, so that's sort of one option, not great. One of the things we've also given him is sort of the spinning lariat move, which can pass through a number of attacks, but it doesn't let him move forward very far. So it sort of only loosely enables him to get close to where he wants to do that damage. So really his primary tool in the Street Fighter IV era to close that distance and get close was this move technically it's called the Vanishing Flat, but that tells you nothing about it, really. We call it the green hand, where Zangief sort of spins and gives you this back flap with this hand that's glowing green for obscure reasons. And the important part about it is this great lunging move that covers like 3/4 of the screen nearly, and it's almost completely invulnerable. And this move requires some super meters, so you don't have access to it all the time. But in previous iterations, it was a great move, and what it did after it hit you was to knock you down. And you were knocked down on your back, and then from there, Zangief could go. He could go into some sort of exciting mix-ups where actually he had a number of strong advantages from sort of a game theoretical perspective, and he could usually land something nasty. One of the changes we made, which sort of confused some people, but I think feels right ultimately, going from Super to Arcade Edition, was the green hand is still got this great invulnerability, still passes through everything, but now when it hits you, it doesn't knock you down anymore. And the thinking was, again, we're talking about it from a balance perspective, but it doesn't really help him in terms of balance. Like, he had great advantage when he knocked you down. He could do all sorts of nasty tricks and setups. So not knocking you down is not really an obvious advantage. But what it does is if you're thinking about Zangief as a character and Zangief as this archetype, it plays back towards his ability to throw you then. Because what it does is sets up this sort of exciting situation where now this giant guy whose whole raison d'etre is to throw you with this grab is now right in your face. So before, with the green hand knocking you down, it was a great move, but sort of led to declension. So the story arc wasn't quite right. It fit Zangief, but it wasn't creating that moment of brilliant tension. So when I think about this sort of narratively, creating that excitement is what it's really all about. And so you're now, without being able to be knocked down, you're sort of forced to face either this epic grab, or you can try and jump away. But he's got this other epic grab called the Siberian Blizzard, which will grab you out of the air, and when people land that, the whole crowd goes nuts. So from a design perspective, it's sort of a neutral move. He sort of stayed the same, but it's created these moments of epic reaction from our players, and really, I think, focuses the attention back on what Zangief as a character and as an archetype is all about, which I think is part of what made Street Fighter so resonant for so long with so many people. So you have to be in concert not only with balance changes, because there's a million ways to solve the balance problem Zangief needs to get in, right? I mean, you can teleport, you can increase his walk speed, as David was talking about, lots of things, but those aren't Zangief. So this is something that's not only doesn't really help him in the balance perspective, but really lends itself to what the character of Zangief is all about, and hopefully really creates a really special experience. So for me, we talk about balance in asymmetric games, and Street Fighter, of course, is an asymmetric game where the characters are different. To capitalize on that, you really need to celebrate the asymmetry and play to that. So that's what we're going for, rather than strictly balance. So now I wanted to hear what Arturo had to say about many of our mistakes.
One quick comment before Arturo that Seth and I just we were talking about this in the hall. I think you guys should hear it though. His example of the green hand, this exact same thing happened on Street Fighter HD Remix. And Zangief has a green hand in the game Super Turbo Street Fighter, which was the version one before HD Remix, the one that my version was the version I worked on was based on. In that version, the green hand does not knock down. During development of the version I worked on, one of the top players of the game, John Choi, suggested that it should knock down because that would improve the balance of the game. So I agreed, and I put it in, and we tested it. And we tested it, and we played it a lot, and after a while, another top player, James Chen, said he didn't have any balance complaints at all about that. He just thought it felt wrong. Exactly what Seth said. He said he's not the throw guy anymore. Dang, he's supposed to be the throw guy, but all he do is poke with this thing and try to knock you down. And it's one of those moves you're just not allowed to make as balancer. And just like you said, we had to use other tools. Not if you think hard enough, you can find something that will be within flavor.
And it's fun. So the flavor of the character constrains that sort of design space that because otherwise the design space is so big that it's really terrifying. By leaning on the flavor of the character and player expectations and things like that, it constrains it nicely. And thinking of them again, as an actual character like in the drama. That's what this guy has to be. You know, you can't have people playing off their parts or something like that. It's just wrong.
Sorry, that's terrible.
Well, that's interesting. This is all pretty new for me. I mean, especially because like I'm a competitive player and like I play a lot on stream. So to talk like in front of a crowd of professionals and game designers is definitely like a different pace for me. But like I'll try to adjust for it. Just bear with me. So for you guys who don't know me, my name is Arturo Sanchez. I'm affiliated with Team Spooky X iPlay winner. I took a different route from Seth and David Sirlin, and pretty much we focused on the community aspect of Street Fighter. Especially like in the past 2 years, like I know like most of you guys all know that streaming technology has really come to the forefront and been able to push competitive gaming to a whole new level. So Team Spooky has pretty much been at the forefront of that. Like I know like some of the recent events we did, like we did NYU's Game Center. What was the
Spring Fighter.
Yeah, Spring Fighter. So we actually streamed that live, and it was sort of impromptu. Like Seth was there and Dylan was there, and like I would like to thank them for like allowing us to come and like and do our thing and really show Street Fighter to a wider audience. And as far as my history goes in competitive gaming, like I've traveled internationally for Street Fighter, and I've been able to play like the best players around the world at a highest level. So game balance, like as a player, really affects me. It really affects me the most as a player. Like as a designer, like like Seth said, like balance like is important, but it's really like kind of like very secondary, at least. Because I feel that there's two types of audiences that you have to develop a game for. Especially like when it comes to a game like Street Fighter, you obviously want to get the casual players to play, but like there's kind of like a slippery slope between like like what the casual players enjoy and how quickly they can get into Street Fighter versus like the hardcore players that have really been playing it for about 10 or 12 years or so. So like it's really hard to kind of balance that gap, to say the least. I know with Street Fighter 4, like you guys have pretty much all played new version of Street Fighter 4, correct? Yeah. So one of the differences in Street Fighter 4, like that really allowed it to appeal to a wider audience, I feel, is like more lenient, like input windows, special moves. Like when you do a fireball, for example, or you do like an uppercut, it's very very intuitive. The motions can kind of overlap, and like you don't have to be very precise on the inputs to get a special move. That's kind of like a stark difference from like 10 or 12 years ago, where fighting games were in the ghetto and they were only played by the hardcore community. Like pretty much a lot of the casual audience did not know about it. But however, like if you wanted to be good like at those types of competitive games, you had to study your ass off. You had to practice. You had to grind in training mode, and like it was really like a lot more execution based as compared to now. Like although like in Street Fighter 4, like in the Street Fighter 4 series and Street Fighter 2 Remix, like they really, I think one of the things that Capcom has done great is they're really like bridged the gap between casual and competitive players. Like it's casual enough, the controls are easy enough that casuals will like want to pick it up and like maybe mash a few moves to understand it. Whereas the hardcore players, while the inputs are certainly easier, like in Street Fighter 4, there's enough depth there. There's enough depth there for them to want to continue playing. Alright, so pretty much like my focus of my talk is to talk about player archetypes and how and how subtle changes between different versions of Street Fighter 4 can really affect competitive balance. My character archetype in Street Fighter is Dalton. I played Dalton, and you guys all know him from the original Street Fighter 2. He's a very zoning-oriented character. He doesn't do a lot of damage up close, but he has a lot of full-screen limbs and really good space control. That pretty much I would say he's a very polarizing character because he controls so much space. He controls so much space with his limbs and his fireballs that it's really hard to get in on him. But as far as Dawson goes, he's a zoning archetype character, and I'm going to talk about some of the subtle changes between the recent versions of Street Fighter 4, and how subtle changes to Dawson as a character really affect competitive gameplay so much. Since obviously I have to play this game in tournaments, little subtle changes in the engine that casual players might not notice, definitely do affect me as a player. Sorry, I got my nose. Okay, so in Street Fighter 4, in the first version of Street Fighter 4, Dawson was considered to be pretty weak, pretty low on the tier list. He had and game balance. And when it comes to game balance, there doesn't have to be a perfect or complete character. Obviously, some characters have specific advantages, and some characters can do things better than others. For example, Zangief is a grappler. He wants to get up in your face, but when he's full screen, he's not really that much of a threat. He totally has to get up in your face. Or maybe one of the new characters in Street Fighter 4, Rufus or Yun, they have very explosive offense. They're high powered, in your face. Or even some of the new Street Fighter 3 characters like Yun, same archetype, a very high powered and in your face, with explosive offense. And pretty much the competitive balance is kind of like rock, paper, scissors, where grapplers, if they get close, they can be zoners, but then grapplers also do good against rushdown archetypes, because rushdown characters like Rufus and Viper, they're totally in your face, right? So one of the changes that I wanted to talk about is how how subtle damage tweaks and about how subtle damage tweaks and changes can pretty much change the game so much. Now, for example, Street Fighter 4, it tends to be it has all the archetypes. It has all the archetypes properly represented. There's a rushdown. There's solid spacing and footsies with Ryu. There's even a runaway archetype with Dawson with the character I play. But since it was the first iteration of the game, it's really hard to balance a fighting game from the offset. It takes many years and many revisions to get it right. And I think fighting games are definitely one of the hardest types of games to balance. And even with subtle tweaks, they can kind of change the tier list of the game so much, who's the best character and who's the worst character. And in the original version of Street Fighter 4, the best character in that game was most of the time was considered to be Sagat. Now, Sagat is very similar to Ryu's archetype. He has he obviously has a fireball. He has an uppercut. He has some different normals, very similar to Ryu, but he does massive damage. He does so much damage in the first version of the game that a lot of people tend to complain about him. But one of the good things about Capcom games is that even though, regardless if they're polarizing or not, this is pretty much why I said balance is kind of secondary, because even if the balance is not great, you will have players for example, that want to play the best characters per se, like the guy, and then you'll have people that want to play low-tier archetypes, like kind of like the worst characters in the game to kind of prove a point. So it gets all types of people involved in competitive gameplay. Now, now the second version of Street Fighter, Super Street Fighter 4, I think this is pretty much this is like your version of the game stuff, right? It's kind of like your baby. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I like Super. But yeah, Super Street Fighter 4, what they did different from the original version of Street Fighter 4 is they made zoning characters in the game a lot more powerful. So in Street Fighter 4, a lot of the zoning characters Guile and Dalsim and Honda were weak. They did not do a lot of damage in the original version of Street Fighter 4. But in Super Street Fighter 4, it was kind of a return to dominant zoning tactics. You have Guile, a character that has two moves. He has a sonic boom and a flash kick. And the subtle property is going better. The subtle property is designed into making those moves and how they work really changes the game so much. One of the differences from Guile from Street Fighter 4 to Super Street Fighter 4, he does more damage. He has a sonic boom, for you guys that don't know, the charge motion, so you have to hold back on the joystick and then press forward and punch through the sonic boom. In Super Street Fighter 4, the charge time for sonic booms was slightly reduced. So even though Guile is a zoning, turtling character, his main form of offense, sonic boom, he's able to throw out a lot more frequently, in Super Street Fighter 4, due to his increased charge time. Also,
How many frames?
I think it's 10. I'm not sure. Do you know stuff?
It was 1/10 of a second.
Oh, 1/10 of a second.
You went from, I think,
So 6 frames.
yeah, 6 frames.
Made that big a difference.
Yeah, and I think he went from probably bottom quarter to
Yeah, upper mid. It's upper
top
mid.
4 maybe.
Yeah.
Pretty much that one change.
Yeah, pretty much that one change. And I can talk about Honda too. Honda is a very similar type of Honda. Is also a charge character similar to Guile. And from Street Fighter 4 to Super Street Fighter 4, they increased his damage output. In Super Street Fighter 4, they gave him some better properties on some of his moves, his iconic headbutt has a little bit more priority now. It does a little bit more damage. So now in Super Street Fighter 4, his character archetype became quite viable. Super Street Fighter 4, as a game, because of those design decisions, I felt it was one of the more balanced versions of Street Fighter 4. A lot of characters were really represented at a high level, and personally, I feel if you want to have a game that's good for a competitive audience, you need to have all character archetypes totally viable. I feel that if there's a slippery slope and either the rushdown characters are too strong or the zoning characters are too strong, it might not make for the best competitive game. But I feel a lot of casual players and designers, since they don't play Street Fighter competitively, it's really hard to notice those subtle changes. And I guess last, I want to talk about how Street Fighter Arcade Edition, the third version of Street Fighter 4, really changed things up from Super. So in Super Street Fighter 4, I was talking about how zoning archetypes are pretty much dominant in Super Street Fighter 4, right? And in Arcade Edition, compared to Super Street Fighter 4, there's 4 new characters. There's Eva Ryu, Oni, Yun, and Yang, right? And you would think that just by adding those 4 characters, it's gonna be pretty much the same game, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. Even though the game might look the same graphically, it's there are subtle changes across the board in addition to the new characters that really change the dynamics of the game completely. Now, I think for Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition's design perspective, one of the complaints about Super, even though I personally thought it was balanced, a lot of people who were spectators, not necessarily players at the highest level, they often complained that Super Street Fighter 4, since zoning was too strong, the pace of the match would kind of be slow, and there would be loud defensive tactics winning the day. And while I feel that's solid technical play, when you're broadcasting it's a wide audience, it might not be the most exciting thing to watch for a casual player, because most casual people at Street Fighter, you want to see people kick and punch and get in there, right? And really blow it up. But as far as Arcade Edition goes, it pretty much flipped the pendulum on the other side. So it went from being a zoning / defensive style game to a complete a completely rush down oriented game. Which is not necessarily something that I agree with personally, but I do think it makes for great. It makes for explosive matches, and it makes for great stream entertainment. I know Evo 2011 this year, Super Street Fighter 4 was definitely one of the most hyped tournaments at Evo this year. Definitely, it was definitely very, very exciting. So, a couple of changes that they made in Arcade Edition were they made the zoning characters a little bit weaker. So I know I talked about how Super Street Fighter 4 Guile, his changes were sonic boom timing and how he does more damage, et cetera, whatnot. Now, the way the game files works, all the zoning characters, they're a little bit weaker on offense. They do less damage, so that kind of leaves more room for the offensive, really explosive types of characters to really shine in Super Street Fighter 4 in Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. In Street Fighter 4, I guess the top 5 would be, I don't know, what do you think, Seth? Akuma? Yeah, yeah, okay. but yeah, the top 5 characters in the game were, I would say, Akuma.
Hey, sorry, Archer, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to have some discussion, so
oh yeah, sure.
After this.
Mm-hmm. It'll be Akuma, Rufus, Balrog, and yeah, I guess I'll leave it at those 3. Now, 2 out of 3 of those characters, Balrog is not an in-your-face, rush-down archetype. He's, while he can get in your face, he plays. It's a very patient style of play. But in Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, a lot of the top tiers are totally designed around characters that have explosive offense, like Yun Yang and Yun Yang and Fei Long. And I personally think it's crazy how the subtle design changes in the differences between each version of Street Fighter 4 really changed the game a lot. Wrapping it up, I know this is kind of I was kind of winging it and I was just talking off key, but I hope this gives you sort of a little bit of an understanding of how competitive gameplay affects me as a player. Thank you.
Obviously there's a lot to talk about, but actually, Archer, you brought up something really interesting that we had some notes that we passed back and forth before the talk, and I just wanted to bring this up. Do you guys, so as designers and you as a top player, how much do you think about spectatorship? Since you're working in a game that is so much now becoming sort of, it was really sort of the first esport I was aware of, right? I was aware that there were big Street Fighter tournaments happening somewhere in the world long before I was aware of say, Counter-Strike or StarCraft. How much do you guys think about that? I guess you can start with this. Because you obviously care a lot about players and flavor and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know how to separate it with caring about everything else. If a game had tons of hit points in it, so it took a really long time to die, like the Capcom vs. SNK 2, example of that, or 1 is the worst example of that. That would be really bad for spectators, but it also is just bad in a vacuum, in my opinion. It's terrible. So that lines right up. All I have to do is not make a game take super long, and I'm happy and the spectators are happy. And there's just so many instances of that where making the gameplay interesting and
like, oh, who's going to win, and oh, it's on the edge of an ice. And it's like what we're trying to do anyway, and it's good for spectators. I mean, I spend maybe a little bit of time thinking about how to maximize it. I think maybe Seth could talk about ultras or something. I think that's a very good example of thinking about spectators. And in fact, it might make for a worse game for players, but a better game for spectators.
Yeah, there's no question about that. The ultras were sort of designed. Ultras, for anyone that might not know, it's just basically a super combo, but it's very cinematic, where the camera takes you out of the sort of 2D side to side and starts spinning all around as the characters do insane things. And it's a fixed animation, which is rare in Street Fighter. One of the beautiful things about the game is there's so few fixed animations that you can't change or adjust or somehow cancel, which always vexes the balance. But yeah, the ultras are specifically in there. I mean, they serve an important gameplay purpose, but it's there explicitly for, I don't know if it's for the stream viewing audience, but for people that just want to see something cool happen. I mean, that's part of why we watch games as well. So, game design-wise, it's a bit of just spectacular, like a cutscene.
So Arturo, you're both a top-level player, but you're also a caster, and I've seen you and Seth cast together. Taking off your caster hat, like, is it annoying when these long animations happen, or are you kind of excited to see them? Like,
well, I mean, like from a player's perspective, like I'm not really paying attention to the graphics. Like I feel like when there is long animation, like it might not necessarily be the best, like from a game design perspective, but as a player, like there's a long animation, regardless of if I'm hitting somebody or getting hit, it gives me more time to think about what I'm going to do.
It's a break. Yeah.
It is a break. Yeah.
The other thing is, I think that the proof of some of the animations go on too long, I think, which can sort of have the opposite effect of actually taking you out of it. And the animator, for anybody making fighting games, is your worst enemy because they always want things to look awesome, and you're like, no, it has to play really fast. But I think the proof is in the if you watch the audience during Rufus's Ultra Combo or something like that, and watch everybody, start mimicking the actions of the moves, and really, that's a payoff. That's sort of self-justifying right there. The animation is a little bit long, but that gives a chance for the crowd to get into it. And if you've got thousands of people in a room all mimicking the animation of something that you did in the game, I think mission accomplished.
Yeah. Excellent. So this is one of the things we talked about before, but I'm really curious. Sort of the relationship between expert players and designers, and for you guys who sort of crossed over, like, did your attitudes about design change when you made that crossover? Like, were there conceptions you had when you were a high-level player that you realized, well, you just didn't understand something about the problem? Like that. Either one of you.
Things I didn't understand as a player, but then I did as a designer.
Like, what was your conception of game design when you were a player, and how, like,
I was game designer then too.
Again,
they're very...
really? Yeah, so that was the other thing. That's something that always constantly comes up, right, is the idea of, like, being a high-level player is also, and Eric says this a lot, of reverse engineering the game you're playing in a way, like becoming a big game designer.
He'll answer a similar question, but not the one you asked.
Please go ahead.
So, I've kind of rattled off several games that I had worked on at the beginning, and there's a really interesting kind of split along how good am I at those games. And that means there's some of these games I worked on, I was super good, and some of them I'm terrible and barely play, and yet I have to steward the balance process. And I think balancing can be done in either case. It's just a question of whose judgment are you listening to, more or less, or whatever. You're always getting tons of feedback. In one board game that I work on, it's totally gotten away from me. Like, of all the games I've worked on, I'm the worst at that game, and I have to rely 100% on the opinions of other people in the playtesting community. Like, if they say something is too good, I just have to go with it because I seriously don't even know. And then it's very different on like Puzzle Fighter and Street Fighter, where I wish I could play it at an extremely high level. That if someone tells me something's too good, I can say, well, that's bullshit. Let's play right now. You try to beat me with it, and you can't, and shut up.
It's shocking how much of the battles actually come down to that. Like, I remember I took a trip to Japan and was there for less than 24 hours because we were arguing about something, and I was sending videos in saying this is too good, it's broken, and they're like, no, it's fine. So I literally flew over there, beat the shit out of everybody, and then they're like, got to do is do this, and then how could you mess this up? And it's always singling out one small element of the system, but it lends itself to all those weird evolutionary examples of when they introduced, I don't even know what they are, like muskrats or something into like Louisiana and to fight a rat problem, and then there's a million examples of frogs in Hawaii, or I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's one of your examples. But it's a really, really gestalt system where I remember right at the very end of Street Fighter 4, we improved Balrog's jab by 1 frame. He got 1 frame faster, 60th of a second faster. And he went from the worst character in the game and almost unable to win to probably top 3 with that 1 change.
Yeah, the relationship between, just seeing a caster and being like, oh, look, we know how, as players, we know why this is broken, why won't it flip.
Well, I mean, as a player, it's very easy to be vocal, and if any of you guys watch the streams, it's people would know that as a player, I'm a lot more vocal about game balance since these are the games I play, and I play them competitively for so long. But I think that game balance in fighting games is definitely one of the hardest. It is like a monumental task. I would not wish it on anybody because it seems no matter what you do, no matter what you do or what design decision you take, somebody's gonna be pissed off.
Yeah,
So
just to comment on that, and in all of the games I've worked on, the same thing happens, and I've heard this from Blizzard too. It's if you propose to make a change in game balance, then the next step is that a lot of people are upset about that. It doesn't matter what it is or if it was right or if it was wrong. People will be upset. Other people will say, oh, maybe that's good. And you never really get everybody going, oh, great job, So there's this constant argument all the time, and it's the balancer's job to be the referee.
Yeah.
Really. It's very tough.
Yeah. It is a constant struggle, and even with these games when they come out, they obviously get QA'd for many years, right? But until the game gets out in the wild and is played by thousands of people whose job it is to pretty much break the game, the highest level, you're not really gonna know how it turns out. And with a lot of the older Capcom titles, with a lot of legacy titles, I'll say Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 especially, that's a game that's been played about 15 years now. Competitively, yeah, 20, yeah, it's a really long time, and the tiers in that game, people thought they had them figured out, year 1. Year 3, year 5, but it's constantly changing.
Without the game changing.
Yeah, without the game changing, it's people just figure out new strategies, new techniques, or they figure out ways to cope and deal with bad matchups and whatnot. So it's a really touchy topic, I think.
Yeah. I mean, is there a sense about, this is something I've started to wonder as we have these major competitive games being released, right, like StarCraft 2, right, it's becoming more common that we have these giant competitive games that are also in these new versions, and they're getting, StarCraft is patched a lot. Street Fighter is getting a new version, I guess, every year now?
Yeah.
Is there a sense of, is there a chance that these things are maybe being over-designed? You guys as designers, is there some feeling of that? Archer, do you wish they would just leave it alone and let it sit for a few years to really shake out?
I'm always torn on this topic. I'm always torn on this topic because, on one end, because as a player, in one sense, you always want to be playing the same version of the game, right? So, if there's a lot of changes and hotfixes. Now keep in mind, a lot of the patches and hotfixes, they come out before we even know about them or even before the game is released, right? So, as a player and a designer, yeah, it's really different.
What do you guys think? Can you over-design a game?
Well, just to throw my friends over at Midway, or now NetherRealm, under the bus a little bit, they made a game called Mortal Kombat 9, which was brilliant in lots of ways, but they had a lot of competitive balance problems, and they were issuing patches almost every 2 weeks.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat 9 has had about 6 or it's had about 6 or 7 patches so far, whereas with Street Fighter, a lot of the new iterations, there were subtle little patches that fixed bugs, but, the next version wouldn't come out until the next year. But with Mortal Kombat, even though the game is so new, in its competitive infancy, when it comes to a fighting game, the first 3 months, the first 3 months of the game and the first year or 2 years of the game are completely different. And I guess Mortal Kombat kind of took the route of like changing things like based on player feedback right away, whereas with Street Fighter, like, there's a lot of data collected, and they kind of like, let it pan out and let the players figure stuff out before they went to any serious balance changes in the version of the game.
Seth, I want you to finish throwing your friends under the bus, though.
Oh, no, I mean, that was, so I think it annoyed me, just because I wanted to sort of understand the system, and then the system kept changing under my feet. But I think a lot of this is, I mean, it seems like there's analogies to, like, actual politics, right, as well, which is interacting with your fan base and how you're never going to make anybody happy. If you have a vision about where you're going, and you can articulate that vision, and it's like, I want the game to be like this, and for these reasons, people can fall in line behind that, even if there are people who are griping or don't like the particulars. Even the people who don't like the particulars can get behind the vision or at least understand it. And the same kind of thing here, whereas I think the Mortal Kombat approach in this sense made it look a little bit more like, less of an authority position, and you have to maintain that authority position, where it was more like, oh, you don't like this? Well, let me change it. Oh, you don't like my shoes? I'll go run back home and change my shoes. And then I think you lose sort of the authoritative voice, and you lose sort of the trust of the player base to really feel like you are the one in charge and you understand what you're doing, and this is how it's going to be.
David, you sort of have a much directer line to your players, right? I mean, because you do everything in this game, I mean, except for the art.
I have to do all the graphic design.
Yeah.
Character illustration. But anyway, I made all the boxes. Half my job is making boxes. I'm a part-time game designer as a hobby, but I'm really a box maker. Okay, so I want to answer that question too, though. Imagine the two ends of the spectrum. On the one end, just never change anything. Just never, ever. The thing is, you release your game, and now let's say there's a whole bunch of characters in this game, and let's say 2 of them are just obviously the best, and they have 8-2 matchups, like they win 80% of the time against all these different characters, and it's just dominating the tournament scene. And if your decision is to do nothing, I think that means you don't care. I think you're just letting your game be shittier than it should be. And you really have some responsibility to do something about that. That happened to me on my game, Puzzle Strike. I thought it was balanced to release it. There were many tournaments, and it was shown to be dominated by basically one character or 1 or 2 characters. And a lot of people said, oh, well, don't do anything. People don't like it when you change games. But, like, yeah, they don't like it, but I think they don't like a broken game they can't play competitively either. So I was forced to release, like, a patch in a physical game to fix that. On the other...
Literally a patch.
But let me kind of talk about the other end. It's like just changing and changing. So like Yomi is another game I made, and it has held up to competitive play. So if I were to just like suddenly release a whole bunch of new stuff there, it would feel like you'd be like, why are you messing with this? Like it wasn't really broken. It was kind of okay, and I feel like you're not letting it lie enough, and you're not letting the players learn enough. But I want to quote Blizzard on this, and then I think that they, in my opinion, they have just the right attitude of where do you want to be on that spectrum? Never change things every day. Where do you want to be? And the answer is you want to be the steward of that game. It's your responsibility to keep it in good working order, and you don't want to let players whine you into changing things. And something that Rob Part of the VP of Design of Blizzard has said is that a bunch of players whine about something and they say it's too good. If your response is like, hot fix it, immediately change it, you're training them. It's like if you had a little kid or something and you let them abuse it. You're just training the player base that all they have to do is whine, and they never have to learn anything, and they never really have to overcome anything or get better. And so you got to be a little stubborn, and push back and say no. Why don't you play a little longer? Why don't you try to look for ways to beat it? Let it lie, let it develop. And there comes a point where you can be like, okay, we as designers, we realize it's screwed up and we need to do something. But you want to do like the minimum number of changes you can get away with to keep this game going. And that's how you keep a competitive scene, alive. It dies if the game just blows up because it's too imbalanced. And then it maybe doesn't die, but it just feels wrong when it's being changed out.
Well, and what you like as a player, and I still remember this, is you like cheating, or you like finding the maximum on the axis, where you're like, like that's what I've been playing so hard to discover was that, and now I finally got it, and abuse everyone with it, and you're snatching it away.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, because we're running out of time, I want to ask one last thing, and then we open up to questions. Hopefully that'll be as well. So, Arturo, I want to talk to you. So, David was involved in Street Fighter HD remake, and Seth was involved in Super Street Fighter 4. When you play those games, I assume you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
When you play those games, can you sense a different, can you sense the difference in voice between maybe what David was doing and maybe what Seth was doing? What would you describe that as being?
Let's see,
Sorry, I wanted to put you guys in the spot.
How can I, it's like, how can I conceptualize this, in a way that you could understand? Okay, well, like I said, Street Fighter 2 is, Street Fighter 2 is obviously, from a different era, you know, it was basically, an arcade, based game, and, obviously every fighting game has a different engine. Street Fighter 2, as a game, it has, like I was saying before, in our presentation, it has very tight control input, for inputting moves. You have to be on point. Now, we're still in versions of the game, of Street Fighter 2, it still has, those tight control inputs, but to make it, easier for casuals to play, to kind of rework some of the motions, most notably, Zangief's Power Driver, in Street Fighter 2, it's 7 points on the joystick, whereas the HD remix, it's 5, something like that.
6 to 5.
Yeah.
In Street Fighter 2, you've got to do 3 of the 4 cardinal directions.
Oh, yeah.
3 of the 4. And then it's
and then HD
1 tick
remix.
less.
And the HD remix is 1 tick less, right? Yeah. So even though, it's still hard to execute moves, but because Sirlin changed some of the inputs and changed some of the properties, it still has that classic, Street Fighter 2 feel, while making it, a little bit more accessible for casual players to play. And, Street Fighter 4, on the other spectrum, it's obviously, the newer game designed to, appeal to a wider audience. There's larger, input windows, and, especially, on defense, when you get knocked down, on defense, sometimes you'll want to do, a wake-up, attack, a wake-up Shoryuken or something. And in Street Fighter 4, the design philosophy for doing wake-up attacks is definitely, a little more lenient to give people, more of a chance to, escape or get away. And the fireball and zoning game in Street Fighter 4, isn't as dominant because, a lot of the casual players, how many of you guys have played Street Fighter 2 in the arcade and, you just totally die to, some fireball spam over and over? And it's the most annoying thing ever, right? But then, in Street Fighter 4, they try to mitigate that, but with easier input windows, give a focus systems, to kind of try and absorb fireballs, to make it less frustrating, for the casual players, get in and generate some offense, but while still making fireballs strong. It's just different design philosophies, I guess.
So I'm going to move on to questions, and if you guys want to throw in a couple of comments.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that it's almost surprising to hear it framed that way because the two goals of Street Fighter HD Remix, which really don't have anything to do with each other, just two separate goals. One of them is on an execution level, the player trying to do the moves, turn the dial as far as possible to easy as it can possibly be. And if you turn it a little too far, then you start to get the moves on accident all the time and get really mad. So Dragon Punches, how many frames you had to do, we turned it up until everyone complained and then stopped right there to make it as easy. So, in my view, it's that was as easy as we could make it, and then in the Street Fighter 4 world, it's actually super hard to play because of all the link combos and very particular timing on bread and butter combos you need to do all the time, and plinking, all these advanced techniques. There's just so much more technical play and so much more difficult to play that game. If you don't know anything about the game at all, you just you're totally clueless, and you walk up to Street Fighter 4 and you try to do a fireball or Dragon Punch, it will be easier than in the version I worked on. They turned their knob even farther than I thought possible.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I turned it up until people started complaining, but then it's actually turned way farther towards easy in Street Fighter 4.
But then it's still in the Street Fighter, it's still in the Street Fighter 2 universe. So even though you turn the dial, there's obviously still Street Fighter 2 legacy stuff. Reversals is still a 1-frame window.
Yeah. Let me mention that. So in reversals, that's when you're knocked down and you get up and you want to do a move right away, like a Dragon Punch that instant you get up. It is totally hard in Street Fighter 2. It's really damn hard. And I think that's dumb. So I'm the first to admit that. Why is it so hard? If you're strategic decisions you want to do it, then why shouldn't you be able to do it? Here's the problem though. If you just apply like a one-step thinking, like, okay, it's hard, so let's make it easy, and like now we're done. I think it really ruins the gameplay dynamics. And in Street Fighter 2 series, you have a lot of offense, a lot of savoring of the person doing the offense being knocked down like sucks so bad. And if you just say like, oh, reversals are easy, then it just gives too much advantage to the defender, and it takes out too many of the mix-ups and mind games, and it just ruins the game in too many ways. And so what I really wanted to do was step 1, make it easier, step 2, some other mysterious thing. But there were just too many limitations, we weren't able to do it, and I was kind of backed into a corner, and I had to say, let's just leave it hard, and I'm sorry.
It's funny, it's almost like some kind of, like, Old Testament, traditional Jewish scholarly interpretation. It's like every small change to the established canon of balance and character and play styles has to take into account every other possible position. And so, like, over the centuries, the moves you can make in the game get tinier and tinier and tinier because everything impacts everything else in the same way.
Seth, do you want to have a comment, or do you should we move on?
Oh, wait, I forgot my second prong. The second prong was just to balance the game for high-level play. So that I was just going to say those are actually unrelated. To make the game, all the character matches as close as possible, but then totally separate, make it easier to play an execution level. Those are the two goals. Okay, go ahead, Seth.
I think this question might be for the space we have left.
We'll move this conversation to Twitter, everyone, so if you want to follow.
There's actually a really interesting conversation on Twitter. It makes me think we should maybe project it, but there's some people are responding to the sort of there's a level of discourse which goes over people's heads, including some going over my head too, even though I have some experience with fighting games. There's an interesting depth to the discussion, which to some people is exciting and some people's off-putting.
We're both.
I don't know if
both exciting and off-putting. That's
right. So, but it's also interesting that there's something that happens in tournament level play, games that engender tournament level play, that is different than just other games that might be rich and deep, like Settlers of Catan, right?
We'll just start doing quick. Do we have the mic?
Maybe we don't need the mic.
We don't need
You guys don't have a mic, and we're not recording this, so.
I think we are. There's a lot of ways in there, but.
All right.
Matt Parker, who plays Balrog.
I'll
So
run
please
around.
say your name and the character you
Where's
play.
the mic? I'll try and get real mobile with the mic. The problem is that the mic slows us down. Where's the mic?
Go.
I'm
Matt Parker. I primarily Balrog.
You're not recording.
I'm a huge Street Fighter fan. Street Fighter 2, I played Chun-Li. I've been playing, I guess, most of my life now, purely. Supporter, love the game, love the community. Have an issue, going to be a little bit of an attack here. I apologize. I feel like a lot of games did not. Street Fighter started off as a dolls game. It was one of the first games I remember having a female character that people could play that was a popular fighting game. And there's a level of misogyny now in the community and in the game that I find kind of disturbing, and I don't know where it came from or why it's there. I don't know why Kami's animation starts with a close-up of her ass. I think it'd be really weird if you had Balrog and you started on his junk. I don't think anybody I don't understand why that's there. And on the streams, I've heard, when a female player is competing, things like I Do Her and things like that on a stream, super alienating to females. I like females, I like Street Fighter, I'd like them to like each other. Well, I don't understand why this is there, and I think it really does hurt the community, which otherwise is very embracive and very open.
I'll take that one, Shannon. And you can
Oh, yeah, I'll chime in.
Yeah, Japan's a very different place. That's your cultural way back down to like the 50s, I think, maybe 1960s.
We didn't have that. That was still...
Well, we didn't have the technology. Yeah, zoom in on the photos. So I think, for better or for worse, it's easy for me to get inured to that kind of thing, because the same thing with, violent games or something like, you've been playing them for a while, you sort of don't see it. That doesn't make it not a reality. On the community side, I'm actually pretty encouraged because, as you mentioned, I think outside of the gender lines, it's probably the most inviting community in the world, actually. Like, not just in games, but it's, you know,
all social classes, all races.
you know, everything. Sexual, you know, preference, every spot on the dial. But women have been sort of, I've seen it changing actually quite quickly in a more embracing direction towards women over the last few years. But it's sort of one of those tipping points where this is just my feeling. I don't have any, you know, I don't think I have any numbers behind this, but there's certainly a lot more women at fighting game events now than there were, like probably 10 times as many. Although I'd still say they're up from like 1 to 10. And so it's getting there. Some of the, and this is where I'm just speaking off personally. I feel like the last sort of holdouts of the boys club kind of mentality are getting more and more vocal because the neighborhood's starting to get mixed. So that's when you start seeing the crosses on the lawn or whatever once in a while. But then you can push past that and get to the breaking point. So I feel like we're on that breaking point right now on the gender issue. But yeah, Capcom's not always pushing things in the healthy direction. So point fairly taken for sure.
But yeah, like I just wanted to chime in, like on the gender issue, what you guys talked about, like with streams. Like I will say, like this much, like Seth said, like I guess the gender role, like of females, you know, casual players in the fighting game community is definitely changing. Like obviously, like you know, until Street Fighter blew up recently, like you know, it was kind of a man's world, but. Recently, like you know, as Street Fighter 4 has gotten like more popular, like there are a lot of female players that are playing Street Fighter 4 and are embraced by the community pretty well. Like actually like one of the most famous female players, like her name is Choco Blanca in Japan. She's signed by Evil Geniuses, and like she's considered to be like one of the better Street Fighter 4 players with Blanca. And like as far as like polarizing commentary goes, like you have to keep in mind, like when it comes to streams, like for us as players, like this is all like very, very new to us. Like the Street Fighter community, like even though like it has like all like cultural, ethnic, like archetypes represented like in the community, a lot of like it's like at the core of it, a lot of it was like inner city people, like you know, playing like at their local video store or bodega. So it definitely tends to be like kind of a ghetto fabulous mentality. So when you combine that with streaming, like you know, it's definitely changing, and there is like some work to be done. But I think the community as a whole like is new to it, and like we're definitely trying to adapt, like to be able to be appealing to like a wider audience. Like I know, for example, like with Evolution 2011, like it had about 2.2 million viewers watching the stream like throughout the weekend. And like that took like more of a professional approach to the commentary. Like I know Seth is doing a lot of commentary, Ultra David does a lot of commentary, but then you have other grassroots tournaments that are just as big, but you know they're more community run, so it's kind of more chaotic. Like I'll give you an example. Like there was this event in Ohio called Seasons Beating Velocity, and they flew like a lot of international players and whatnot, but like it was held like in a Korean cafe, like so like it was kind of small, like and cramped, and like that's more of a community aspect where you know where it's like you have people like running around, and like you might have like some players on commentary. It's like you might have some people like on the mic talking crap, but you know like it's still hype and amazing anyway. It's like people want to see like their real stuff, but they want to keep it professional. So it's kind of hard to balance the lines, but I definitely think like we're getting better at it like as we grow.
It's also worth noting though that like there's the same problem in StarCraft, right? Which is guys in big metal suits versus gold aliens versus space bugs. And there's still this weird misogyny and this weird divide. And so I'm definitely thinking imagery has something to do with it, but it's also just, you know, the communities themselves, right? It's some part of it is just the policing and these things growing, and people in those communities growing.
Do you ever have to move on to another game in spite of balance? Like for a designer, maybe you don't want to design a game that's going to last 20 years because you need to sell the next one. Whereas a gamer, you might have to just move on to what everybody's playing, because there's no sense in playing a game by yourself.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, that's definitely a problem. Like, I mean, that's definitely, like, interesting that you bring that up, because now, like, since it's kind of been, like, a fighting game renaissance, like, you know, like, we're playing, like, new iterations and new versions of the game every year, whereas, like, in the old days, when there weren't as many releases, like, you know, you kind of just, like, you kind of just dealt with what you had, and, like, you know, like, you kind of tried to make the best of it. But now, like, there are new games coming out all the time, and, you know, people don't want to be left behind.
I do, though.
I advocate play a game because you think it's good. That's a good reason to play a game.
I agree.
A bad reason to play a game because everyone else is playing it. And if you choose to behave that way, to play a game because everyone else is playing it, not because you think it's good, what you've done is you've voted against good games. You've voted against games that you think are good, and you're hurting the ability of designers to make new games and have any kind of following. So please don't just be a bandwagoner. If you want to play the popular game because you like it, that's terrific. You should play it.
Yeah,
My position is right in between.
Yeah, I mean, I play old and new games. I like them both.
Yeah,
You can definitely play what you like. You follow my advice.
Yeah, like, I do play what I like, but, like, I do bitch about the new games, but, hey, it's all good. It's all good.
So, from one design perspective at Capcom, it's literally marching orders that we try and design the game to be played for 10 years. That's the target. If that's close to infinity, I guess that's as close as we're going to get. So we don't think for 1,000 years. We think this game could be played for 10 years, and then we're happy. But at the other side, I have this is a part of a larger philosophical commitment, but contra what you're saying a bit, I feel like the more people are playing a game, the better that game is. Like, that is an actual positive contribution to that game. Yeah. So the network effect of more people playing a game actually increases the value, not just my win means more, but the game becomes more interesting and nuanced as a result of more people playing. It could be.
I actually want to...
Yes.
Can I follow up on that real quick?
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
I mean, Capcom, like, I think it's great to try and make a game for 10 years, and that's totally awesome. I mean, the game I'm trying to make is trying to be that kind of same player skill thing, but at the same time, Capcom's a for-profit corporation. Like, you're going to make Street Fighter 5. If Street Fighter 4... if Street Fighter 4 was perfect, you would still make Street Fighter 5, right?
Yeah.
And so there is a conflict internally, and that does filter down. I mean, the EPs have to deal with that, but also the designers are going to have to deal with that.
Well, they actually don't. So that's literally the target. It's like you don't think about the next iteration of the game.
Sure, but it's just like, I mean, they know they're, I mean, like, that's easy to say, but hard to actually, like, it's just, you know where your paycheck comes from. You can't not know that. I'm not saying they're tools or anything like that. It's just like, there's just this idea that there's going to be, I mean, what the game industry does in its current form, in for-profit corporations, is make more games, right? And if you're doing a long-term player skill-based esports level competitive game, it's hard to know how to, like, that's why I thought it was an interesting question, but it's kind of dancing around this kind of obvious capitalistic aspect of it. There's like, you're going to have to make another version of this game. What are you going to do different?
This is the happy side of Japan, if I could. Like, they're very good at, once you have a job at Capcom, you have pretty much a job for life, as far as Capcom is concerned.
Right.
Generally speaking. So there are people who've been there for 20 years, and it's actually a major badge of respect and sort of a way you can move ahead if your game actually does survive 10 years. So the design teams, there's no question that there's tons of predatory business practices that go on all the time, but the design teams themselves are at least fairly well insulated from that, and they have their own measures of respect and reward sort of independent of those kind of concerns. So there's no question you can't get away from that, but those guys get away about as far as you possibly can.
The other interesting thing, and this is something that I think Kevin can't see if he's still sitting here, something that's like with StarCraft, right? There's a sense in which Blizzard is trying to become the NFL of StarCraft, and that is still extremely lucrative, right? Like, they don't necessarily need to release StarCraft 3 within 10 years, because they can keep charging.
That's true in esports, but then, I mean, so microtransactions is a whole separate thing. I don't know if we want to get into that, and I mean, Dave talked about that a little bit in his little, like, rant there at the very beginning, but like...
Although it could be a solution to that problem.
Yeah, but it also could be it works, right? But who knows? Right. I mean, that's the discussion that you had there. But the thing about the way the NFL or professional non-esports work in this country, and I assume around the world, is that the expectation is the key money-making thing, right? And so we're a very long way away from making as much on StarCraft launch on spectation later. So they can't, like, Blizzard can't replace the, they may want to do that, but Blizzard cannot
replace selling a new $50 game with making a great game that lasts 100 years.
I'm not sure how far away we are from that. I've spent a lot more money watching StarCraft 2 than I spent on StarCraft 2.
We can probably get some numbers on this.
Whatever that means, the curves are
Chris, can I give you my answer to this? So I think what you're saying is that if you act in a profit-maximizing way, then you might not do what I'm saying. And I think that's correct. If you act in a profit-maximizing way, you might not really make interesting games. You might make disposable, throwaway games that I don't care about. And in the book Built to Last, it's talking about the best corporations. They talk about the concept that money is like blood to a company. Blood is not the reason to exist. Blood enables you to exist. What are you going to do with the money? You know what I would do with the money? Make a game that lasts 10 years. That's what I want to do. That's what's interesting. If I can save myself doing it, I'm going to do it. And if you want to choose profit maximization, maybe you're not going to do what I'm going to do, but what you're going to do, I'm going to think sucks and is boring. You're going to have every right to do that.
Yeah,
it's just a question of if I can sustain the other way of doing it.
Yeah, but I think it gets more subtle than that. That is great, rah, Build to Last, except for it gets more complicated at a large company. And with the designers who are employed by a large company, I'm just curious how that works with a thing where it's just Street Fighter. You know you're going to make the next one, like, duh.
It's also, I mean, it's more
There's a
complicated.
spectrum of what I'm saying, too.
Yeah.
It's more complicated because games get better when they survive, and one of the ways they survive is that people can make a living off of them.
Yeah,
so
totally.
the same reason games get better when there are more people in them, and one of the ways they have more people in them is when they have like silly stuff. So that's the reason you might make a game worse to make it better, and it is. I don't know.
In the back.
I was wondering, I would like to hear the panel's thoughts on the fate of skill in the present game industry and culture and in the possible future. Because it seems to me that in genres that we might call esports games, that's become exclusively the domain of player skill, players who have to be good. While we get a lot of criticism for other kinds of games for sort of engineering that out of the system, right? You don't have to be good at a game, you just have to play for a long time to beef up your character, to just allocate stats. And that seems to have become extremely partitioned. And whereas games like Street Fighter are sort of like this, last fortress holding out, where you actually have to be good at games. And I'm wondering if you could speak about that and what relevance this possibly has to other kinds of games.
David, does that kind of speak to your opening?
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying. We're like the last bastion of this kind of thing, and I don't want competitive games to be invaded by all of this garbage that other genres like Facebook games. Sorry. But I mean, it seems like inevitable. I mean,
but you could also use RPGs, right?
Yeah,
use RPGs.
But all this like stuff that's not player skill has just taken over more and more and more, and I wonder if our days are numbered. I really wonder if StarCraft 3 isn't going to have a pre-order only Reaver and a grind to unlock the Lurker or something like that. It sounds like a joke, but maybe that's our future, unfortunately. I don't know.
But look at the market community that Valve built around Team Fortress 2. I mean, they sell those fucking hats.
Yeah, but look at hats don't affect gameplay.
But I just mean that like they've created a competitive space for a game that's extremely social. The barrier to entry is extremely low. Anyone can play that game as a medic or whatever. But there is a thriving competitive community.
No, but if you go on Steam stats right now, Counter-Strike and Counter-Strike Source each are both higher up than, and those both cost $20. They still haven't dropped the price of those games. And TF2 is below that, even though they're giving the fucking thing away for free.
Yeah, but they've made tons of money off of TF2.
Of course. They don't know how to do that with Counter-Strike without fucking up the fact that they're both above it. Like, TF2 is an experiment for Valve. They're trying to figure out what to do in this space
It's
before
an
they should
experiment that works.
Well, sort of. It makes millions of dollars. It doesn't make billions of dollars. It's not wow, right? And so they need to figure this out before Dota ships. And that's what TF2 is. They're trying to figure this out before Dota. It is not necessarily an experiment. A lot of people do not play TF2 competitively, though.
Yeah,
I
feel the need to point out that if you want to mention competitive TF2, you have to keep in mind that competitive TF2 is a game where the players impose what are basically house rules, and at the end of the day, you're playing a completely different game. Right. Items and classes are banned.
But that's true of Street Fighter, isn't it?
Often.
You have to.
I wouldn't know. Sorry.
Well, we don't play that. You can't play that character.
Well, not really.
It happens sometimes. There's certainly fighting games,
right? The whole freaking game, the way you talk about it, is really exceptional.
Street Fighter is rare to do that.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah, there are fighting games for that.
Smash Brothers.
Original question, isn't it also possible that more quote-unquote casual games or less skill-based games are opening the ecosystem to more players. The more games that people play, the more they hunger for games that let them show off their skills. So in the long term, we're going to have a deeper and more diverse ecosystem of game players, and that games, like any cultural form, is going to be diverse, not head towards a single sort of point on the right.
Casual and easy is not an accurate equation, and that many casual games actually got very hard at the end of them, and web games are a bastion of skill play that I can game, game after game after game on the web that's actually designed to be hard. I'm not just talking about Massacre, I'm talking about games that you can find on these web portals. I think the fact that a certain genre of the games, a certain media of the games field have started gravitating towards casual players, they've ignored the fact that there's been an uprising of much lighter and maybe not commercially successful at this point, but much more engaged skill game activity in other forums that just don't happen to be, Dota.
T-ball is a skill game.
I mean, this is all really nice, and I feel like we can talk really specifically about all these things, but as an outsider, it feels like we're talking about Merlot. Like, this is like a 1986 Merlot or a 1999 Merlot, and it's like a lot of talk. One's a little more cherry, one's a little more nutty, and like, it can all be balanced, and some people are going to like some, and some people are going to like others. I guess the problem that I see with Capcom in the Street Fighter formula, and what's killed it after Street Fighter 2, is you get caught up in the Merlot. You keep fixing it and fixing it and fixing it, and suddenly we've wasted 6 years redeveloping Street Fighter, and yet we have 2D Street Fighter right now, and we have Battle Arena Toshinden, or whatever 3D Soul Calibur thing is. And those are the two fighting games that we have pretty much exclusively on the market. There's like zero room for like big changes, and I can't think of any other genre besides like sports, Madden. And I'm wondering like, is that not a problem for a huge genre that we're still locked into these two styles of play exclusively because people get so caught up in the very, very nitty-gritty?
There's things like one kind of computer game that kind of play on a computer. There's like a huge variety of fighting games.
Yeah, but I disagree with that because a 2D game, I mean,
yeah, all 2D games are the same. There's only one fighting game, but there's like 20 different vibrant fighting games.
I feel like a Darkstalkers and a Street Fighter are more similar than, say, like a Split Second and a Gran Turismo.
Tekken, Soul Calibur, Mortal Kombat.
Well, Smash Brothers might be a good example of a really dramatically different.
I agree with that. And I would say Deadliest Warrior and Bushido Blade would be two. And I feel like Deadliest Warrior, look at pretty poorly constructed game, but the fact that it's like different for one, it sold a bajillion copies.
UFC.
That's what I mean when.
Yeah, the first UFC game was.
Yeah, but I guess you're naming lots of things. I'm just total zero on. But I'm just surprised I never see that in Capcom myself. I feel like the only difference is Tatsunoko. I guess they're all different people who play a lot of fighting games. But even Tatsunoko versus Capcom still feels like Street Fighter to somebody who's on the outside. So I'm curious, why is that? Why don't we see them going in other directions?
There's a few reasons. Well, one, I just mentioned that our chairman and CEO actually owns a wine. The wine. So the wine analogy is not wrong, but it's one of those things that, again, seems a bit stupid from the outside, but then, like a pure 70s krautrock or something like that. Like, when you listen to it from the outside, you're like, yeah, whatever. Bunch of doodling Germans with the keyboards. But then when you start to really get into it and understand the terms on which the games are played, it's one of those games that definitely rewards. I think the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So if you can learn to appreciate the nutty versus the cherry overtones, and that means something to you, like in a legitimate way, not just like I'm going to wear my ascot and be pretentious. Like literally, that's an emotional experience for you, and it's a shared community. Like those kinds of obscurities can be a source of strength. But as far as the narrowness of the space, we're doing things, and this goes back to the skill thing, where one of the objectives, because I sort of traded my life away to go work on Street Fighter. I had a happy that is now closed off to me teaching school.
I remember those days.
Yeah. But one of the objectives is to try and make sure that the game doesn't push people out. So we have a lot of traditions that we have to respect. There's only certain degrees to which we can turn the dial based on precedent, but we want to make the games possible for new people to play. Well, having having deep experiences, but ones that don't completely give you the finger the first time you try and play it, which is, I think, the iteration of the previous rise and fall of fighting games. Super compelling experience, but that just kept iterating and adding new mechanics on top of what was there before. So the bar to jump to play good Street Fighter 2 was this high, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition was this high, Street Fighter 3 or Alpha 3, and it just so by the time
complexity versus depth.
So by the time the games crashed, we were asking new players. It was interesting. When I only had to make this jump every time, it was cool and that was fun. But when you have somebody new to the genre, instead of asking them to jump this far, they now have to jump this far, and so we're trying to squeeze that out. But ultimately, I think you're correct that there's a small space, but there's a reason that space is there because it's been really
even Thrill Marvel is so different than
Yeah,
Street Fighter 4.
it is. Like it's definitely hard to keep on legacy gameplay.
So we're going to take one more question because we're running out, but Chris, I actually want to respond because I think you do point out something that's interesting that is not just sort of a difference between different games in the genre, but actually I think different ways of approaching game design. So there's sort of a fox and hedgehog type sort of dialogue, right? We're all hedgehogs, right? We're interested in making games and learning games that just take years to refine and understand, and we slowly every iteration is a slight change, then we see how that affects. But then there are the guys on Congregate, right? There's the guys on Newgrounds who just churn out new game types every week. And sometimes those game types go on to become the games that we love, right? That they're someone like Dota, right? Someone made a funny little tower defense thing, and we probably forgot about it, and then suddenly it develops. So I think it's definitely that's sort of more the mentality, right? And certainly for designers, I think it's fair enough to say for designers in the fighting game space, they are much more interested in, they're much more of the mentality of the hedgehog. They're going to dig deep, really deep in one place. Whereas sort of the fox type is more seen in social games. I think there's a lot of movement in social games, a lot of movement in casual games, a lot of movement in web games. But that space is much more open to that. And and in the indie games too, right? One of the more interesting fighting games I've played recently was Needhog, right, by Mark Essen. And that someone may take Needhog someday and turn it into something like Street Fighter 2. And so we're glad we have someone like Mark Essen who moved on to the next thing and never even called. So I think you point out something that is valuable. So one more question.
So, talk about the high-level tournament play and all these iterations of Street Fighter and all these different versions and all these different tweaks that are made. Do you find that the high-level players are picking a new character for each new iteration because that's the better, they can do better with him, or you find that the high-level players are, if I play Bell Team, I continue to play Bell Team in the next iteration, and I'm either happy or sad that he got more or less powerful?
Like I said, like I said before, in my speech, Street Fighter, regardless of the version of the game, it's balanced or imbalanced or not, it definitely caters to two types of player archetypes. You have one type of player archetype that they just want to pick the best character. Every version of the game is they want to do whatever's possible to get that win. Daigo Umehara, for example, he's played Ryu in the. He's one of the best Street Fighter players in Japan, well known by everybody. And the first two versions of Street Fighter 4, he was playing Ryu, but in Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, he decided to play S tier character, which is Yun, pretty close to the top of the list. And then you have some people that they say okay, my character's nerd, but no matter what, I'm just gonna try to tough it out. I'm gonna try to beat the top tiers, and even though it might be impossible, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I want to do whatever it takes to win. Even if they lose a lot. So even though they're complaining about it, they're still going to keep playing.
And both types.
Yeah, both types.
Yeah, and both types that actually win tournaments and are.
Absolutely, but I mean the thing I love about, and the thing this is where it goes to there's such a range of expressiveness, human expressiveness possible with these characters. That's just even in an RPG and all the different things I can do in an RPG. I don't feel like you get a 10. I can watch you play an RPG for 100 hours and not know as much about you as I can know in 30 seconds from watching you play Street Fighter. And I love that about the game. So there's many people who are sort of married. So they get sad because they know they can't switch to the top tier character. They're but I'm that guy. And not in some sort of emotional, I really love E Honda as I feel close to him as a cool character archetype. It's just that's the kind of player you are, and you're just stuck with that.
So well.
And it fits their thinking, so they're not able to shift like that. And that's to me, that's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely player archetypes. Like, I mean, me for example, like I mean, as a player, like, you know, I don't necessarily have like the best execution, and like, you know, like I'm actually known to have like one of the players like with like the sloppiest execution. So like it tends to be like the best characters in Street Fighter 4, like Street Fighter in general, they have like a high execution barrier. But like I can't necessarily play those characters, so like I play characters that have zoning or polarizing archetypes like Dolphin.
All right. Well, since we're running, like we're gonna switch over. But thanks for you guys coming up.
Before you guys get out, also thanks. Let's hear it for Charles for putting together. Sort of loosening up and getting more comfortable with each other, and the conversations are getting more heated, because the next up after our break, which again we're going to do a shorter break, is the open problem. So this is a much more free-form